Welcome to Flop Files. What if I told you one of the world's most famous fast food brands was built by a man who was rejected over 1,000 times and didn't become successful until the age of 65? Today, we're unpacking the absolutely fascinating, incredibly messy, and highly ironic true story of Colonel Harland Sanders and the Kentucky Fried Chicken Empire. We're going to look past the iconic white suit to see the real struggles he faced and how his absolute unbreakable dedication to quality ultimately led him into an all-out war with his very own creation. So you've probably seen this story floating around the internet, right? It's kind of the ultimate classic motivational tale. The legend goes that Colonel Sanders, desperate, broke, and sleeping in his car, drove all across the country pitching his secret chicken recipe to anyone who would listen. And according to this massive myth, he was rejected exactly 1,009 times before a single person finally bought in. It sounds amazing, doesn't it? A beautiful story of perseverance. But, well, the reality is a lot less about 1,000 slammed doors and a lot more about a really good dinner.
Okay, let's dive into this. Sanders wasn't desperately knocking on 1,000 restaurant doors. According to actual historical accounts, around 1952, Sanders was simply visiting a buddy of his out in Utah, a restaurant operator named Pete Harmon. Just as a thank you for the hospitality, Sanders offered to cook dinner for Pete at his restaurant, using his special recipe. Well, Harmon thought the chicken was so unbelievably good that they pretty much immediately struck a deal to sell it, keep the recipe completely secret, and split the profits. Just like that, Pete Harmon became the very first franchisee.
Section 1. The real Harland Sanders.
Now, the truth is, Sanders' real life needs absolutely zero fabricated internet myths to be completely mind-blowing. His dad passed away when he was super young, leaving little Harland to cook and care for his siblings. And before he ever donned that famous string tie, he bounced through a genuinely absurd resume just to survive. Seriously, listen to this. He left school at 12 to work as a farmhand and a mule tender. He practiced law without a degree. He sold insurance, he sold Michelin tires, and, get this, he even delivered babies as a part-time obstetrician. Eventually, he wound up operating a Shell gas station in Corbin, Kentucky. He basically failed at every traditional career path you can imagine, yet his sheer resilience just kept him pushing forward.
Section 2. Perfecting the secret recipe.
That legendary culinary calling finally kicked in at his small Corbin gas station during the 1930s. To make some extra cash, he started serving home-cooked meals to hungry travelers. But Sanders ran into a massive operational bottleneck. Pan-frying his chicken took about 30 minutes in order. That is way too slow when you've got to line up people waiting. So he tried deep frying. Sure, it was faster, but it produced this dry, unevenly cooked meat, which to him was just totally unacceptable. Then, in 1939, a literal game changer. Sanders modified a commercial pressure cooker into a pressure fryer. It dropped the cooking time to just 8 or 9 minutes while producing incredibly juicy, perfect chicken. By 1940, his legendary cooking technique and flavor profile were locked in.
And that brings us to what is arguably one of the most famous, tightly guarded trade secrets in global history, the 11 herbs and spices. Even today, the recipe is not patented, because getting a patent means you have to publicly list your ingredients. Instead, it's a closely held trade secret. A copy signed by Sanders himself is locked away in a vault in Louisville. And to maintain absolute airtight secrecy, KFC literally employs 2 completely separate food science companies, Griffith Laboratories and McCormick & Company. Each firm mixes only half of the recipe, meaning no single entity actually knows the entire formula.
But hey, the secret might have actually slipped out. In 2016, the Chicago Tribune reported a wild story. Joe Leddington, a nephew by marriage of the colonel, found a handwritten recipe tucked away in an old family scrapbook. It listed the exact measurements for 11 spices mixed with 2 cups of white flour. We're talking thyme, basil, paprika, ginger, all the classics. But the supposed secret weapon? 3 tablespoons of white pepper. Leddington even remembered mixing the recipe as a kid, noting that white pepper was definitely the star ingredient. The Tribune staffers actually tested it out, added a little MSG, and claimed it tasted completely indistinguishable from modern KFC.
Section 3. The first chicken franchise. Now, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Flop Files, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that success can come at any age. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how things started to change. Let's look back at that 1952 dinner with Pete Harmon. Harmon was a total visionary. He's actually the guy who coined the name Kentucky Fried Chicken and invented that iconic bucket packaging. But as the business started exploding, the industry demanded one rigid rule for franchising: uniformity. Customers want the exact same meal whether they're in New York or nowhere, Utah.
And this concept of strict corporate uniformity, it was on a direct collision course with Harland Sanders. He was a true artisan. To him, cooking fried chicken was basically a religion. So the corporate push for speed, cheaper ingredients, and exact conformity began to slowly chip away at the Colonel's soul.
Section 4. Suing his own empire. This leads us right into an absolutely unbelievable narrative twist, the bitter, public falling out between the creator and the corporate monster he brought to life. Here's the timeline. By 1964, the business was growing so fast that Sanders, who was 74 at the time, felt totally overwhelmed. So he sold the company for $2 million, but stayed on the payroll as a brand ambassador. Fast forward to 1971, a massive corporate conglomerate named Harland buys KFC. Almost instantly, Sanders realized they were tweaking his recipes to cut costs and boost profit margins. And if you know anything about the Colonel by now, you know he absolutely refused to stay quiet about it. He went on the offensive. He toured the country, popping into KFC locations unannounced. And if he didn't like what he tasted, he would famously raise hell right there in the dining room. He publicly blasted the new corporate gravy as slop and wallpaper paste. In one particularly brutal interview, he literally told the press the food they were serving ain't fit for my dogs. I mean, can you even imagine being a corporate executive and having the literal face of your brand, the guy printed on every single bucket, telling national news that your food is dog food?
And this brilliantly illustrates how chaotic things got. Sanders and his wife eventually decided, you know what? We're going to open a brand new, authentic Southern restaurant called the Claudia Sanders Dinner House. They wanted to franchise it and serve real food again. Well, Hueblein aggressively blocked this, claiming they owned the exclusive rights to his name and the word Colonel. So, in retaliation, Harland Sanders dropped a nuclear bomb. He sued his own empire for a staggering $122 million for interfering with his new business.
Ultimately, this massive legal showdown was settled out of court. Sanders got a $1 million payout and won the right to keep his new restaurant open. But the corporation forced a major concession. Sanders had to legally agree to stop publicly criticizing KFC's food. They essentially had to pay the Colonel $1 million just to get him to bite his tongue about the chicken bearing his own face. Oh, and by the way, that Claudia Sanders Dinner House, it is still open and serving food today in Shelbyville, Kentucky.
Section 5. A global fast food giant. So while Sanders was fighting his war for artisanal quality back home, the KFC corporate machine was quietly executing one of the most brilliant international expansions in history, the crown jewel, China. In 1987, KFC made history as the very first Western fast food chain to open in China. It was a massive, massive gamble, but it paid off in ways they couldn't have imagined. Today, Yum China runs thousands of locations, making it the company's single biggest market in the world. And they pulled it off by completely rewriting the playbook. They didn't just copy the American menu, they totally localized it. Researchers actually break their dominance down into 5 strategic pillars. First, infusing the brand with local Chinese flavors. Second, expanding at breakneck speed. Third, building their own nationwide logistics network from scratch because the existing infrastructure just wasn't there. Fourth, massive employee training. But the 5th pillar is the most surprising. They largely avoided franchising. They chose to directly own the outlets to maintain absolute iron grip control over the quality. It's an incredible irony, really, because that obsession with quality control is something the Colonel himself would have absolutely loved.
Because at the end of the day, beneath all the corporate drama, the billion-dollar buyouts, and the massive international supply chains, the foundation of this entire empire rests on the shoulders of one incredibly stubborn, deeply hardworking man. A guy who failed at dozens of random jobs, survived the Great Depression, and truly believed that doing things the right way was infinitely more important than doing them the cheap way.
Colonel Sanders was rejected more than 1,000 times before changing his life forever. So the next time life tells you no, remember that one yes can change everything. What's the biggest setback you've ever overcome? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Flop Files.